You could say we saw a little pre-spring cleaning from former President Trump today. The presumptive Republican presidential nominee told a conservative media outlet, quote, "I will never do anything that will jeopardize or hurt Social Security or Medicare." That's a turnaround from earlier this week when Mr. Trump seemed to open the door to cuts and entitlements during an interview with CNBC. The Biden campaign quickly jumped on those comments, turning them into a digital campaign ad. Joining me now to discuss all of this is our panel, Navin Nayak, President and Executive Director of the American Progress Action Fund, and Ramesh Ponnuru, Editor at the National Review. Thank you so much for being here, guys. Ramesh, let me just start with you. When you first heard the comments from former President Trump suggesting he was open to making changes to Social Security, which was a shift from what we've heard from him previously, what did you think? How politically damaging do you think it is? Because cleanup aside, it's on camera, and you know as well as we all do, the Biden campaign is going to run with that through November.
Look, the Democrats were going to run against Trump on Social Security and Medicare, regardless of what he said, because they always run on those issues. They're good issues for the Democrats. But Trump did provide some ammunition with those, frankly, somewhat incomprehensible remarks that he made the other day. This cleanup is not going to change the ultimate fact. He said those things. The quote that he gave today doesn't actually take it off the table either, because presumably any president's not going to say, I'm trying to hurt or jeopardize these programs when he makes changes or cuts to it.
Yeah. I mean, Navin, what do you make of this? I mean, as Ramesh rightfully points out, they were going to run against this anyway, but now they do have this ad.
Well, like before he ran for president, Donald Trump said repeatedly he was open to cutting it. And then when he ran for president, he knew it was such a politically toxic thing that he stopped saying it. And it has been hard to get the press to believe it. That changed this week, right? Donald Trump said on the record, and I think going back, we actually found footage that I think a lot of people missed in 2020 in the midst of COVID. He pushed for suspending the payroll tax, basically, which would have been another way to bankrupt Social Security. So he's very comfortable with the policy. I know he understands the politics are terrible. So I think it does reveal really what his, where his priorities are.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to kind of watch this debate unfold as we head toward November. I want to show you guys some new polling. It shows that Donald Trump is up in some key battleground states. And of course, as we know, look, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania. He spent his day in court today. There were no cameras. Ramesh, we have reporting, not surprisingly, that his campaign has an entire strategy to try to capitalize on these moments where he's in court, these split screen moments. So far, it has helped him in the primary. But do you think we continue to see that in the general election, or does it get very risky when you're talking about moderate and independent voters?
I think it is much riskier in a general election. I don't think, particularly, if we have convictions, that is going to help him with independence. The question, though, is, to the extent that this is a base election, the same things that helped him in the primaries, that is solidifying his core support, that will be helpful for him.
Yeah. Navin, do you think that the Democrats have been aggressive enough in terms of their strategy on this point, on the legal battles, on the court cases? It's not something that we really hear President Biden talk a whole lot about. Do you think that should shift? Do you expect it to shift at all?
I actually think President Biden's been smart not to actually get too engaged in that, because I think that would play into Donald Trump's. He's trying to pretend like he's, this is a political prosecution. It's not. It's our legal system. And I think it is actually very powerful and will actually increasingly grow on the American people to remind themselves that this is what a presidency is like under Donald Trump. He's constantly creating chaos. There's criminality around him. I mean, how many campaign managers of his have been to jail?
In other words, you're saying if President Biden starts to weigh in, he only gives credence,
I think
arguably, to that charge that Trump is making against him.
I think the place where President Biden can and should engage and will engage is the fact that Donald Trump made an argument that he should be above the law, that he thinks that he should be a king, that he should be immune, that literally he could kill his opponent, and that should be allowed. I think that's a place where it reveals how he thinks, very un-American. And that's different than, I think, the cases.
Ramesh, what do you make of that?
I think that that's absolutely fair game. Trump has said really astonishingly extreme things about presidential authority before, during, and after his presidency. And it would be, I wouldn't bank Biden's entire campaign on this, but of course that's got to be an element of it.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys about this revelation that no labels seems to be ready to run a third-party candidate. Navin, what do you make of that? How concerned are Democrats about that?
Listen, I think all of the third-party candidates are risked. I think we all remember 2016. I worked on that campaign. One of the biggest differences between 2016 and 2020 was the third-party vote. It got 6% in 2016. It got 1% in 2020. We're at a moment where people are still very frustrated generally. So I think that is an absolute concern. I think we've got to make sure that the American people understand that this is a much bigger choice than just Democrats versus Republicans, than just Biden versus Trump, that it is about the future of the country, and you've got to pick sides in that.
Ramesh, what do you make of it? And, of course, there's RFK, too, who apparently has chosen his VP nominee, so we all await that announcement from him. Is it something that could hurt Republicans? Could it go the other way?
I think it's hard to predict because Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in particular, obviously the family name, he's got some sort of ancestral connections to the Democrats. On the other hand, a lot of what he's saying nowadays has more appeal to Republican and Republican-leaning voters than to Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters, so you could see him taking more out of Trump. That's not what the polls currently show, but it is what they might show in a few months.
All right, I want to get you both to weigh in on the big debate over TikTok. Play you a little bit of sound from former Trump Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Here's what he had to say a little bit earlier today.
I think the legislation should pass, and I think it should be sold. I understand the technology. It's a great business, and I'm going to put together a group to buy TikTok.
You're trying to buy TikTok?
I am, because this should be owned by U.S. businesses. It would be a combination of investors, so there would be no one investor that controlled this. And the issue is all about the technology. This needs to be controlled by U.S.
So Steve Mnuchin, Ramesh, could own TikTok. We'll have to see. We also have to see what happens in the Senate. The House just passed a bill basically saying ByteDance, a Chinese-owned company, needs to divest or else the U.S. will ban TikTok. What are you anticipating is going to happen here?
I think that bill has a lot of momentum coming out of the House. It was a very, very large margin, particularly lopsided among Republicans, even though President Trump was sort of against that legislation, but lopsided, too, among the Democrats. There are some Republicans who have concerns about it, Senator Rand Paul in particular, but I suspect that there is a strong enough consensus that it's going to pass.
Navin, what do you think?
I think there's a huge appetite to have to do something here, given the national security risks that everyone is sort of raising. I think there's a lot of caution around doing it in a way that's going to backfire both in terms of the legal case and how effective this can be and actually, with the public.
All right. Ramesh and Navin, thank you. Great conversation.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.